The turkey was perfectly golden. The dining room table gleamed with Mom's best china. 23 family members packed into my parents' house for the annual Thanksgiving celebration, and I was once again the topic of concerned conversation. "Rachel's 34 now," Aunt Linda said, her voice carrying that particular tone of pity. "Still no real career path?" Dad set down his carving knife with theatrical precision. "Rachel is finding herself. Still." He looked at me across the table with disappointment so familiar it barely registered anymore. "While your siblings thrive, you struggle." My brother Derek, 36, surgical resident, raised his wine glass slightly. My sister Amanda, 32, corporate attorney, smiled sympathetically. Both successful. Both accomplished. Both everything I apparently wasn't. Mom nodded, her expression pained. "It's disappointing. We gave all three of you the same opportunities, the same education. Derek and Amanda made something of themselves." I smiled politely and took a sip of water. Under the table, my phone was already unlocked. I pulled up my encrypted messaging app and typed quickly to my legal team at Morrison & Associates. "Exercise dissolution clause for Anderson Enterprises. Effective immediately. Notify all principals. Full exit strategy as discussed. R.A." My thumb hovered over send for maybe 3 seconds. Then I pressed it. I looked up at Dad. "Noted," I said calmly. Within 30 seconds, both my parents' phones began vibrating on the sideboard where they'd left them during dinner. Then ringing. Then ringing again. Dad frowned. "That's odd. Multiple calls." Mom's phone lit up with text notifications. One after another. "Excuse me," Dad muttered, standing. He walked to the sideboard, picked up his phone, and his face went from confusion to pale concern in under 5 seconds. Mom followed, checking her own phone. I watched the color drain from her face. "We need to take this," Dad said quietly to Mom. They walked quickly toward his office. Derek looked confused. "What's going on?" Amanda frowned. "Business call on Thanksgiving?" I continued eating my sweet potatoes. Perfectly seasoned. Mom had always been an excellent cook. Aunt Linda tried to resume conversation. "So, Rachel, are you still doing that? What was it? Online thing?" "Something like that," I replied pleasantly. In Dad's office I could hear raised voices. Not quite shouting but close. The dinner conversation faltered. Cousins exchanged glances. Grandma asked if anyone wanted more cranberry sauce. 15 minutes later my parents hadn't returned. Amanda went to check on them. She came back looking pale. They said they need privacy. Something about their business. Dad looks really upset. I checked my phone. A text from Patricia Morrison, senior partner at my law firm. "Dissolution papers delivered. Both principals notified. Anderson Enterprises partnership officially terminated per contract clause 7.3. They're calling every number they have for Apex Strategic Holdings. Should I respond?" I typed back. "Not yet. Let them process. You're making a huge mistake, Rachel." Dad sat across from me at the coffee shop near campus, my college graduation announcement sitting between us like an accusation. "Pre-med. For years. And you're just quitting?" "I'm not quitting. I'm changing direction." "To what?" "Business consulting." He said it like the words tasted bad. "That's not a real plan. That's what people say when they don't have a plan." Mom reached across the table. "Honey, we're just worried. Derek is thriving in medical school. This is your future we're talking about." "My future. Not yours." Dad's jaw tightened. "We paid for your education. 4 years of tuition, room and board. That investment was meant to secure your future, not fund some quarter-life crisis." I'd heard this argument for 3 months, ever since I told them I wasn't applying to medical schools. That I'd spent my senior year teaching myself data analytics, financial modeling and strategic planning. That I had a job offer from a small consulting startup in the city. "The job pays $52,000, I said. "I can support myself." $52,000. Dad laughed bitterly. "Derek will make triple that as a resident. Amanda's law firm's starting salary is $140,000. But sure, you go find yourself on $52,000. 2 years later, Amanda passed the bar. The family celebration was elaborate. Dinner at the city's best steakhouse, champagne, toasts. Dad's toast specifically mentioned 2 successful children, and how proud he was that some of his kids understood the value of professional achievement. I was there. I applauded. I smiled. I just closed my 3rd consulting contract for $85,000. My specialized niche, competitive intelligence and market positioning analysis for tech startups, was gaining traction. But to my family, I was still just finding myself. By year 4, I'd saved enough to start my own firm. Anderson Strategic Advisory launched with 1 employee, me and 2 clients. Within 18 months, I had 5 clients and 2 full-time researchers working remotely. At family dinners, the conversation always followed the same pattern. Derek's research was published in JAMA. Dad would announce proudly. Amanda made junior partner. Mom would beam. Then, inevitably, and Rachel is still doing her consulting thing. We keep hoping she'll find something more stable. Year 6, everything changed. I was analyzing a mid-size manufacturing company for a client when I noticed something in the public filings. Anderson Enterprises, my parents' commercial real estate development company, had some concerning financial patterns. Aggressive expansion, high leverage, thin margins. My parents had started Anderson Enterprises 28 years ago. They'd built it from a single small commercial property into a regional player with 12 properties and annual revenues around $8 million. It was their pride and joy, their legacy. It was also financially fragile in ways they didn't seem to realize. Dad mentioned at Sunday dinner that they were seeking growth capital for a new development project. Could triple our portfolio size, he said excitedly. Legacy development. Something to pass on to you kids. Derek wasn't interested. His career was medicine. Amanda wasn't interested. She preferred liquid assets and stock portfolios. Nobody asked me. I made a phone call to Patricia Morrison, an attorney I'd worked with on several M&A advisory projects. Patricia, I want to structure a significant investment. But I need it completely confidential. How confidential? My parents can't know it's me. There was a pause. Rachel, mixing family and business. I know the risks. But I've analyzed their company. Good fundamentals, decent management, but they need capital and they need strategic guidance. I can provide both. Through a blind entity? Exactly. We structured it carefully. Apex Strategic Holdings LLC, a Delaware entity with multiple corporate layers between it and me. On paper, Apex was a private equity firm specializing in commercial real estate. In reality, it was my capital, my analysis, my risk. I invested $12 million into Anderson Enterprises. $12 million I'd made through 7 years of building my consulting firm, making smart investments, living below my means and working 18-hour days while my family dismissed me as unsuccessful. The investment gave Apex a 35% equity stake and 1 board seat, which I filled with Patricia Morrison representing the fund's interests. My parents were ecstatic. They called me from the signing. Rachel, we got the funding. This is going to change everything for the family legacy. That's wonderful, I said. I'm so happy for you. Yeah, well, this is what real business looks like. Maybe you'll get there someday. This is generational wealth we're building. I looked at the investment documents on my screen. My $12 million. My generational wealth. Funding their dream. I hope it works out, I said. Anderson Enterprises flourished. They acquired 4 new properties, developed 2 from ground up, and expanded into adjacent markets. The business press started paying attention. Dad was interviewed for regional business magazines. At family gatherings, he'd hold court about their success. The challenges of real estate development, the complexity of commercial leasing, the sophistication required to manage a growing portfolio. It's not like service businesses, he'd say, glancing at me. This is real assets. Real value. Tangible. My service business now had 22 employees and $18 million in annual revenue. We'd expanded into full-service strategic advisory, M&A consulting and executive coaching. Fortune 500 companies hired us. I'd been featured in business journals Dad never read. But to him I was still the unsuccessful child. Patricia attended Anderson Enterprises board meetings quarterly as Apex's representative. She'd report back to me on financials, strategy decisions and my parents' management approach. They're competent, she'd say. Conservative in some ways, aggressive in others. The Apex capital gave them stability to make smart growth decisions. And they have no idea? None. Your mother actually mentioned you at the last meeting. Said something about hoping you'd find a real career, eventually, so you could invest in actual assets like real estate. The irony was almost painful. Year 8, Derek got married. The wedding was extravagant. 200 guests, destination venue, my parents sparing no expense for their successful son. During the rehearsal dinner, Dad gave a speech about legacy and achievement. I look at Derek and Amanda, he said, and I see everything your mother and I hope to build. Professional excellence. Real accomplishment. They make us so proud. He didn't mention me. Not even in passing. I sat at my assigned table with distant cousins and smiled through the whole thing. My company had just been valued at $67 million. My personal net worth was $43 million. The $12 million I'd invested in Anderson Enterprises had appreciated to $19 million in current valuation. But I was invisible. Amanda's promotion to senior partner came with similar celebration. Dinner, champagne, Dad talking about how both his successful children had exceeded his expectations. 2 out of 3 isn't bad, Uncle Mike joked. Everyone laughed, including Mom. I smiled politely and said nothing. At the office the next day, I reviewed Anderson Enterprises' latest quarterly reports. They were planning another major expansion, leveraging the stability of Apex's investment to take on additional debt for an ambitious mixed-use development. It was risky. Very risky. The kind of risk that's acceptable when you have stable equity backing, but catastrophic if that backing disappears. I made a note in my file. Continued monitoring. Which brought me to today. Thanksgiving. The annual gathering where family success was measured and compared. Derek talking about his surgical fellowship. Amanda discussing her cases. Both golden, both celebrated, both everything I apparently wasn't. And then Dad's declaration, you're the unsuccessful child. While your siblings thrive, you struggle. Mom's agreement, disappointing. 23 family members watching. Some sympathetic, some pitying, some satisfied that someone was lower on the hierarchy than them. I'd smiled, replied, noted, and ended their business with a text message. Now, 45 minutes into dinner, my parents still hadn't returned to the table. Should we start dessert? Grandma asked uncertainly. Maybe we should check on them, Aunt Linda suggested. I stood up. I'll go. Derek looked relieved. Thanks, Rachel. I walked down the familiar hallway to Dad's office. The door was closed, but I could hear voices inside. Dad's angry, stressed. Mom's panicked, frightened. I knocked once and opened the door. They were both on phones. Dad was talking rapidly to someone about contracts and legal obligations. Mom was texting frantically. The color still hadn't returned to either of their faces. They looked up when I entered. Dad lowered his phone. Rachel, not now. We have a serious business crisis. I know. You don't understand. Our major investor, Apex Strategic Holdings, they're exercising some kind of dissolution clause. They're pulling out. All $19 million. Just gone. I know, I repeated. Mom's eyes were wet. This is catastrophic. We've leveraged their investment for the new development. If they pull out, we could lose everything. The bank could call our loans. We might have to sell properties at a loss. I know. Dad's expression shifted from stress to irritation. Rachel, we're trying to handle a crisis here. Can you give us privacy? I don't think you understand, I said calmly. I know about the crisis because I created it. They both stared at me. I pulled out my phone and opened a folder. Turned the screen so they could see it. Apex Strategic Holdings LLC. Registered in Delaware. Managing Member, RA Ventures. Principal, Rachel Anderson. That's me. The silence in the office was absolute. I don't. Dad looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. What is this? I pulled up more documents. The original investment agreement with my digital signature through the RA Ventures entity. Wire transfer records showing $12 million flowing from my accounts into Anderson Enterprises. Board meeting minutes Patricia had sent me quarterly. 8 years ago you needed growth capital. You had a good business but needed strategic funding to scale. I analyzed your financials, saw the potential, and invested $12 million through a blind LLC structure. Mom's hand went to her mouth. $12 million? You don't have $12 million. I had $12 million 8 years ago. Today my consulting firm is valued at $67 million. My personal net worth is $43 million. The investment in your company has appreciated to $19 million in current valuation. Dad shook his head slowly. That's not possible. You do freelance consulting. You barely make enough to. I run a strategic advisory firm with 22 employees and $18 million in annual revenue. We advise Fortune 500 companies on competitive positioning, M&A strategy, and market analysis. I've been doing this successfully for 12 years. And for 8 of those years I've been your silent partner. I pulled up my company's website on my phone. Showed them client testimonials, case studies, my Forbes profile from last year. Anderson Strategic Advisory. That's my firm. These are my clients. This is what I built while you told everyone I was struggling. Mom sank into Dad's desk chair, staring at the phone screen like it might be fake. Why? Dad's voice was hoarse. Why hide it? Initially, because I wanted to help you build something without the complication of family dynamics. I wanted your success to be yours, not questioned because your unsuccessful daughter funded it. I paused. And I wanted to see if success would change how you treated me. We've always. You just told a room full of family members that I'm the unsuccessful child. That I'm disappointing. You've spent 12 years dismissing my career, pitying my choices, comparing me unfavorably to Derek and Amanda at every possible opportunity. Dad opened his mouth. Closed it. At Derek's rehearsal dinner, you talked about your 2 successful children. 2. Not 3. You didn't even mention me. Rachel, we didn't mean. You meant exactly what you said. Every single time. My voice was steady, calm. And you said it while standing in a business that exists in its current form because of my capital, my strategic analysis, my risk. I pulled up the dissolution email I'd sent to Patricia. Showed them the timestamp. I sent this text at 7:52 p.m. tonight. While you were declaring me unsuccessful, I was executing a legal exit from Anderson Enterprises. The dissolution clause is standard in all equity partnership agreements. You signed it. Your lawyers approved it. Any major investor has the right to exit with proper notice and terms. But the development, Mom whispered. We're mid-construction. We've committed to vendors, contractors. The bank loans are contingent on having stable equity backing. I know. I wrote the initial investment analysis that Apex used to structure the deal. Dad's face cycled through emotions. Shock, disbelief, anger, fear, and something that might have been understanding. You're destroying our business to prove a point? No. I'm divesting from a partnership where I'm not valued. You built a real business, Dad. You have 12 properties, good management, strong cash flow. You can survive this. You'll have to restructure, possibly sell assets to stabilize, scale back the expansion. But you'll survive. I closed my phone. What I'm destroying is the lie. The lie that I'm unsuccessful. The lie that my work doesn't matter. The lie that you built this expansion alone. We didn't know. You didn't know because you never asked. In 12 years, have either of you ever asked detailed questions about my work? Visited my office? Met my team? Asked to see my financials? Silence. You assumed I was struggling because it fit your narrative. Derek the doctor, Amanda the lawyer, Rachel the disappointment. You never considered that maybe I was succeeding on a level you couldn't see because you refused to look. Mom was crying now. We're your parents. We love you. We just wanted. You wanted me to succeed in ways you understood. Traditional careers. Paths you could explain to your friends. And when I chose differently, you decided I was failing. Even when I was funding your success. Dad looked at the papers on his desk. Urgent messages from their lawyers, their bank, their board. What happens now? Now you have 60 days to restructure. Find new investors, sell assets, renegotiate loans. You have options. Patricia can even recommend some strategic advisors if you need help. Would you help us? I looked at my father. Really looked at him. The man who'd raised me, supported me through childhood, paid for my education. The man who'd also spent 12 years telling me I wasn't good enough. Anderson Strategic Advisory could help you. We have experience with crisis management and business restructuring. Our rate for this kind of work is usually $500,000, but for family we do it for $250,000. You charge us. You just spent Thanksgiving dinner calling me unsuccessful in front of the entire family. Yes, I charge you. Professional services cost money. You taught me that, remember? Real business, tangible value, not like service businesses. The words hung in the air like smoke. Rachel, Mom stood up, reaching for me. We're so sorry. We didn't understand. We didn't see. You saw what you wanted to see. And now you'll see the consequences. I walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and the family's waiting for dessert. You should probably tell them something. Maybe that your unsuccessful daughter just taught you a $12 million lesson about assumptions. The story spread through the family like wildfire. Aunt Linda called. Uncle Mike called. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years suddenly wanted to catch up. Derek showed up at my office unannounced. 47 stories up in a downtown high-rise, floor-to-ceiling windows, my team working in the open concept space behind glass walls. He stood in my lobby looking stunned. This is your company? This is my company. Mom said you invested $12 million in Anderson Enterprises. That you're worth $43 million. That you run a firm with 22 employees. All true. He walked to the windows looking out at the city. Why didn't you tell us? I tried to, Derek. Not in explicit dollar amounts, but I tried. My consulting firm is growing. We landed a major client. I'm hiring staff. Every time, someone would dismiss it or change the subject to your research or Amanda's cases. I never dismissed you. You never stood up for me either. You laughed along with the jokes. You went along with Mom and Dad's narrative that I was the unsuccessful one. He turned to face me. You're right. We all did. And I'm sorry. It was the first real apology I'd gotten. What happens to Anderson Enterprises? He asked. They'll survive. They're already in emergency meetings with their bank and other potential investors. Patricia tells me they'll likely sell 3 properties to stabilize, keep 9 and postpone the new development for 2 years. They'll be smaller but solvent. And you won't reconsider? No. Amanda came by that evening. We sat in my conference room, the one with the view I'd always dreamed of having, and she cried. I was horrible to you, she said. All those jokes, all those comparisons. I thought I was successful, but you built something extraordinary and we were too blind to see it. Yes, I agreed. You were. Can you forgive us? Eventually. But right now I need you all to sit with what you did. With how you made me feel for 12 years. Anderson Enterprises stabilized. They sold 3 properties for $11.4 million, used the capital to satisfy the bank's requirements, and restructured into a smaller but sustainable operation. The business survived. Mom and Dad sent a formal letter of apology. 3 pages of carefully written acknowledgement about their behavior, their assumptions, their failure to see me. It was genuine and painful and probably took them hours to write. I responded with a brief email. Received. Thank you. We'll talk when I'm ready. That Christmas I didn't go to the family gathering. I spent it with my team. The people who'd believed in me, who'd helped build something real, who saw my worth without needing a crisis to prove it. Patricia joined us for dinner. They're asking about you constantly. Wanting to know how to make it right. There's no making it right. There's only moving forward differently. Will you? I don't know yet. The family dynamics had fundamentally shifted. No more jokes about my career. No more pitying looks. No more comparisons to Derek and Amanda. Instead there was careful politeness. Distance. The kind of relationship you have with people who hurt you and are now trying to figure out how to exist in the aftermath. Mom called every week. Not demanding, just present. Hi honey, just checking in. No pressure to call back. Dad sent emails with business articles he thought I'd find interesting. Subject lines like thought of you and reminded me of your work. It was strange being seen by them for the first time. At Easter I agreed to come to dinner. Just immediate family. Mom, Dad, Derek, Amanda. No extended relatives, no audience. Dad stood when I arrived. Rachel. Thank you for coming. The dining room table looked different somehow. Smaller. More intimate. We sat down to eat and the conversation was careful. They asked about my work, real questions. Details about projects, clients, challenges. We hired Anderson Strategic Advisory, Dad said quietly. Different team, not you. But your firm helped us restructure. They were excellent. I know. Patricia told me you were good clients. We learned something through this, Mom said. About assumptions. About seeing what we expect to see instead of what's real. And? I asked. And you were right. We built Anderson Enterprises on a foundation you provided. And we treated you like you were failing while you were succeeding beyond anything we'd accomplished. Dad cleared his throat. The business press has been asking about our turnaround strategy. We've been telling them the truth, that we had a wake-up call from someone who understood business better than we did. We want to rebuild, Mom said. Not the business, that's fine. The relationship. With you. If you're willing. I looked at my parents. At Derek and Amanda sitting uncomfortably at the table. At the family I'd been part of for 34 years but had never quite belonged to. I'm willing, I said finally. But on different terms. No more dismissing my work. No more comparisons. No more being invisible while you celebrate everyone else. Agreed, Dad said immediately. And you have to actually mean it. Not just say it because you learned I have money. We mean it, Mom said. We were wrong. We were blind. We were terrible to you. And we're sorry. It wasn't perfect. It wouldn't erase 12 years of being dismissed. But it was honest. We ate dinner and they asked questions. Real questions. About how I built the firm, what strategies I used, what clients I'd worked with. Derek wanted to understand the financial modeling. Amanda was curious about the legal structures. They were seeing me. Finally. After dinner, Dad asked if he could show me something. He led me to his office. The same office where I'd confronted them on Thanksgiving. On the wall, next to framed photos of Derek's medical degree and Amanda's law school graduation, was a frame. Inside was a Forbes article, 30 Under 40, Strategic Advisory Leaders Reshaping Corporate Intelligence. My face. My company. My achievements. I subscribed to Forbes, Dad said quietly. Been reading every issue. This article ran 3 years ago. You were 31 years old and already considered a leader in your field. And I never even knew to look for it. No, I agreed. You didn't. I'm looking now. We're looking now. If you'll let us. I studied the framed article. Thought about the girl who'd graduated college 8 years ago and been told she was making a mistake. The woman who'd built a multi-million-dollar firm while her family pitied her. The daughter who'd invested $12 million in her parents' dream while they called her unsuccessful. Hey, I said. I'll let you. It wasn't forgiveness yet. But it was a beginning. Anderson Enterprises had stabilized completely. 9 properties, sustainable operations, modest but healthy growth. They'd learned to build smart instead of big. Anderson Strategic Advisory had grown to 31 employees and $27 million in annual revenue. We'd been acquired by a larger consulting firm for $94 million, and I'd stayed on as managing partner with full operational control. At Thanksgiving, at my brownstone this time hosting for the first time, I stood up to give a toast. 20 people around the table. My team, my chosen family of colleagues and friends who'd supported me. And my blood family, Mom, Dad, Derek, Amanda and their spouses. To building things, I said, raising my glass. To seeing clearly. To the courage to walk away when you're not valued and the grace to return when that changes. Dad raised his glass, tears in his eyes. To Rachel, who taught us that success isn't about what you can see, it's about what you choose to recognize. We drank and I felt something settle in my chest. Not forgiveness entirely, but peace. The kind that comes from knowing your worth doesn't depend on anyone else's recognition. Though recognition, when it finally comes, feels like sunlight after years of shadow. You're the unsuccessful child, Dad had said. Unsuccessful? I'd thought that night, my thumb over the send button. Let me show you what I've built. And I did. The most important lesson wasn't that I proved them wrong. It was that I proved to myself I didn't need their validation to be right. But having it finally, that was worth the wait.